everybody. Thank you for joining us. We are going to be talking about Anne's books and her current work in progress today. Do you want to talk a little bit about yourself first?
Yeah, sure. Hi, I'm Anne. I am the self-published author of King's Rise, which is an urban fantasy sort of. It's been described as a bit of a horror novel, but okay, there are horror elements, but I don't think that's the main gist of it. I'm British. I'm currently based in Germany, and my book only came out last month, so this is my first novel, and I'm very excited about it. And yeah, obviously, but we'll be talking about my work in progress, which is the sequel. So yeah, that's going to be interesting. I hope.
Yay, exciting. It's always exciting to get your first book out there.
Yes, very, very, very exciting. A bit nerve-wracking, obviously. As I'm sure you know.
Yeah.
I mean, you're a bit more seasoned. You've got loads of books out, but I'm sure you remember sort of getting your first one out and the kind of journey it was and everything. So yeah, it's been very exciting. Quite exhausting, but really, really nice.
That's good. We have someone in the audience. Hello, thank you for joining us.
Hello.
So if you guys want to keep updated on the videos I post and these live interviews I do every Saturday, make sure to subscribe. I am the Witchy Reader, and we are going to be talking about Anne and her books, her debut novel, and the sequel, which will be coming out. You probably don't have a date for it yet, since you just
No,
published
no, I'm in the very early stages of writing
it.
it, so yeah,
I
it's
bet.
gonna be a while.
Yeah, since you said you just published the first book, I figured this one wasn't exactly ready yet.
No, no, it's far,
So,
far from it. Far from it.
um, so are you ready to get into the questions?
Yeah, sure.
All right. Uh, Question one: what's your WIP about? If it's a sequel, you can talk about the overall story, including previous books.
hmm Yeah, okay. I mean, I've already briefly touched on this. So this is the sequel. This is going to be the sequel to the novel I've just published a month ago, which is called King's Rise. A very recent review described it as sort of 70% police procedural, 20% Arthurian fantasy, and 10% urban horror, which I think is pretty much spot on. Um, it's so I mean the fantasy element are still quite integral to the plot, so people who like urban fantasy are not going to be feel short charged or anything, but it is very sort of police procedurally as well. We've got a young detective who is investigating what seems to be a series of murders in her quiet hometown on the English west coast near the border with Wales, and it sort of begins with a body being found on a beach, and then all sorts of weird things start happening, and yeah, they find out pretty quickly that there is more to this world than they have so far believed. Yeah, and the sequel is gonna basically be continue the story. It's gonna continue the story. It's gonna be another investigation of a series of murders, but we're gonna get a bit more of the characters from the first novel, and then obviously the overarching storyline is gonna be developed further. So that's what I'm doing at the moment.
Sounds intriguing. Question two: what is your MC like?
Right. So the main character is Neve, who is the sort of young detective investigating these murders. Although, just like King's Rise, this is sort of a multiple viewpoint type novel. So there are a couple of other characters that are quite important. Most importantly, probably Neve's younger brother Lance, who she's been looking after since she was 18, because their parents died when they were both very young, and then they had to move in with their horrible grandmother, and they were very keen to get out. So the moment Neve turned 18, she sort of took legal guardianship of Lance, and they sort of moved in together. She's a very gifted investigator. She's 28 years old. She's sort of a single parent to her younger brother, who's 18. She comes across as very self-confident, but obviously, just like many women in sort of male-dominated environments, she has her self-doubts and that she doesn't want others to see and that she's dealing with. She's got a very rational mind. Obviously, she's an investigator, so she's sort of used to looking at empirical evidence, and it's difficult for her to come to terms with what she's now confronted with. In the first novel, she discovers that she's got some magical powers, which which is difficult for her again to sort of accept and come to terms with. She's trying to look after her brother. She's trying to do her job well. She's, her superior officer isn't exactly her friend. So she's got all this stuff going on, and now she's also supposed to be a witch. So that's a bit of a tough call for her. And then there is Lance. He is finding it very hard to trust because of what's happened to him in the past. He's suffered a couple of terrible losses very early in life: his parents, his best friend, two of his friends, and I think he feels a bit of guilt about that. So those are probably the two main characters, and their relationship, sort of the sibling relationship between them, is very important to me personally, and also just for the overall novel. And a couple of readers of the first one really picked up on that as one of the strengths of the first novel, which I found very exciting. So yeah, it's those two.
Interesting. I feel like a lot of times sibling relationships and friendships and pretty much anything that's not like a romantic thing can be underutilized, especially in fantasy. And those are some relationships that are very important to me. So I really like that your main relationship is between these two siblings.
Yeah. I mean, there is a bit of romance too, but yeah, sort of the main sort of big love thing is really between the two of them, because they're very fond of each other. They are sort of constantly at loggerheads about something, because Lance is a teenager and he's growing up and everything. But they are quite fond of each other, so it's quite nice.
Nice. We have another person in the audience. Hello, thank you for joining.
Hello.
Okay, so that was question 2. So question 3, what are your other important characters like?
That's quite a tricky question, because there are quite a few of them. I'll talk a little bit about the ones that are probably going to feature most prominently in this next book. So one of the really important one is Percy Walker, who is Neve's sort of right-hand man, her bag man, her sergeant. He's very supportive of her. They work very well together, but he's got his own demons, which we sort of glimpsed in the first book, and which we're now going to see more of in my current WIP. And then there is, and here is where the romance comes in, Ash K, who is Neve's ex-fiance. They're back together now, and he's a big supporter of her and a big source of support of her, but he also cheated on her in the past, so there is still a little bit of they were very young and stuff. I'm not excusing it, but she's forgiven him, but Lance hasn't, and there is still a bit of friction there. He's a journalist. He's still working as a freelance journalist now, having quit the paper he used to work at, and I think one of his old colleagues is going to turn up and cause a bit of trouble and ask a few awkward questions about a couple of things. So I'm not 100% sure where that relationship is going between the two of them, though. I've got an idea in my head, which I wasn't going to run with, but is sort of, when this happens, you sort of get this idea that you're sort of like, nah, I don't really want to do that, and then it sort of gets stuck, and you're sort of like, oh, I might have to. So it's that sort of thing, but I'm not sure where it's going yet. But those are probably the most important two, and then there are other people that they sort of interact with. One of the fallouts from the first book, because Lance and his friends sort of opened a gateway to another world, was the return of King Arthur, and he's still around, so he's gonna appear a little bit more.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
Question 4. If your MC has a love interest, what is their dynamic like?
Well, yeah, I mean, I've already mentioned Ash. They like I said, she broke off their engagement because he cheated, and this happened, I think, nearly 4 years ago. He's also the nephew of Neve's best friend and neighbor, who's a bit older than the two of them, and sort of she raised him, kind of thing. Yeah, but Neve's forgiven him. They're back together. They're quite happy, but obviously there's still a little bit of friction there, and he sort of knows he still has to win her trust back. The person he's cheated with is also still around, which is causing a bit of awkwardness. But yeah, so it's good between them for now. So we'll see where that goes.
Question 5. Who, despite the love interest, is closest to your MC? What is their dynamic like?
So it's probably, I mean, it's obviously her bagman, so Percy Walker, her sergeant, because they spend a lot of time together, working together. They're friends. They work really well together. They became a lot closer during the last book because he was really supportive of her. And then there is also her next door neighbor and friend, Aggie, who basically is a bit of a sort of older sister type figure to her, and who's very supportive. I've realized she has never had time to make many friends because she's been so busy, you know, with work and raising her brother and stuff. But this is going to change because she met quite a lot of people in the last book that are going to sort of become friends to her. But yeah, those two are probably the most important people in her life, apart from Ash and Lance.
Nice. Question 6. What's your world like? Is it similar to our world? Is it different? How so?
So it is our world. It's set in England about 8 to 10 years ago, but obviously, you know, there is more to it than people have realized. So, you know, until the last book, everyone sort of thought, yeah, okay, it's this world that we live in. But then some of them had to realize, no, actually, it's sort of part of a bigger structure of several worlds, and the fact that one gateway has now opened between them, even though that's sort of closed back down. They need to realize that, you know, magic is going to start seeping in and everything. Weird things are going to start happening. Weird people are going to start appearing. There is also a subculture of sort of, you know, immortal people and magical people and stuff that sort of live in secret and that are now sort of going to be revealed. So yeah, it is our world, but there are obviously the sort of classic magical elements and fantasy elements to it.
Yeah, which explains why it's urban fantasy.
Exactly. It wouldn't be. That's right.
Yeah, I like urban fantasy. It's in my top 3 favorite types of fantasy, but it's probably like number 3 because I tend to go to high fantasy and low fantasy a little bit more. But I still enjoy urban fantasy. It can be a lot of fun.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of I'm like you, but in the inverse. It's sort of urban fantasy is probably my go-to because it's more familiar, and then it sort of trickles down from there. Yeah.
Question 7. If you write fantasy, what's your magic system?
So I'd say it's probably sort of a mixture of kind of a hard magic and a soft magic system type thing. So there are different, so people can use magic in different ways. There are some who sort of, there are sort of more active and more passive magic users. So some sort of act as conduits, and then others can actively manipulate it. If you're able to use magic actively, then obviously there are all sorts of fixed rules that you can't break. There is sort of this classic trope in a lot of sort of Arthurian fantasy that sort of says, you know, if you want something, then you have to give something up. So most classically, if you want to make a life, then you have to take a life, for example. So that was quite important in the last book. And then, you know, Neve has sort of elements of being both a conduit and an active magic user, but at the moment she still cannot use it purposefully because she just hasn't learned how. Because until quite recently she didn't know she had that power. So she's going to have to start learning, but it's never going to be a case of, you know, she'll be able to use it to solve cases or anything. She'll still have to very much rely on her mind and her faculties as an investigator and everything. So yeah, because there is no magic that's going to help you work out that mystery.
Yeah, that's nice. Interesting. Question 8. Do you like to write major plot twists?
I do. They make me very happy. Because, you know, obviously it's difficult. I don't know if you find this, but I find it difficult to do them well because obviously you have to set them up beforehand. So it doesn't become this sort of, you know, situation where it happens completely out of the blue. But yeah, I mean, I do enjoy writing them, and I do enjoy reading them when they're well done. You know, in the sort of these jaw-dropping moments. I had some of them with books that I read. One of them was completely wasted on me, where they sort of revealed a character that they'd mentioned several times before. I'd just forgotten their name. And I was just like, what? So yeah, no, but I do love them. Yeah, they're great.
Yeah, well, that's part of the beauty of editing because you can go back and add little foreshadowing or
Yeah,
hints to this plot reveal.
exactly. Yeah, yeah.
I know I've had to do that before because sometimes the plot twist even gets you off guard. At least it does for me.
Yeah, oh yeah, that happens a lot. Sort of like, oh, and do you hate it when that happens sometimes and you're just like, oh no, oh, this is gonna happen. I'm not sure I like this. And then it gets stuck and you can't sort of fix it. Yeah, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, definitely. But I like it sometimes when that happens, and it can change. It can get annoying sometimes though, because it can kind of change direction of the story. That kind of
Yeah.
happened in my WIP.
Did it?
Yeah, it kind of changed the complete direction of the story, and because of it, book 3 is going to be very different than what I originally had planned. So
Right.
I had to
Oh dear.
outline it.
Yeah. Oh god, I feel your pain. Yeah, definitely been there.
But I'd say, despite that issue, which was annoying, I actually like the direction it's going a little bit more than the
Okay, that's
original
good.
direction. So I'm like, okay, there's some good and some bad with this.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you. I was gonna, do you like it better now? But it sounds like you do.
But I like good plot twists, especially when you like reread the book, and then you can notice those little foreshadowing hints to uh
Yeah, it's
to
nice.
it coming up, and it's like, oh wait, I get this now. And
Yeah,
it can be
exactly. Yeah.
it's very fun. Question 9: what tropes are in your WIP?
Tropes, right. So I mean, I guess Neve is a bit of a sort of reluctant hero type person, especially when it comes to the sort of magical fantasy elements of the story. She likes her job, she wants to be a good cop, no pun intended, and a good parent and sister to her brother, and sort of finding out that the world is full of magic and that she can use it as sort of it gets in the way of what she really wants to do with her life, and also of her desire for things to be rational and for her to be in control and everything. So she's a bit overwhelmed, and then she isn't that happy about it, but at the same time she's also fascinated. So she's a reluctant, but she's getting there. And then I think Lance I think will discover a talent in this, but I've only just had this thought 2 days ago or something, so might still be thrown out. But so he's sort of a bit of a novice, and a lucky novice, and he's got a mentor, and she had a mentor in the first book, and then she's going to have another mentor now. So there is this mentoring and sort of finding your feet element to it.
Nice. Question 10: what themes are in your WIP?
So I think one of the main themes is revealed really in the relationship between Neve and Lance, and that sort of family, and specifically sort of the relationship between two siblings, who one of whom is obviously quite a bit older than the other one, and also a parent. So family, and like I say, the sibling relationship is really quite integral to this whole thing. There's obviously a bit of good versus evil, because you've got a major baddie that's sort of got to be revealed and everything. But and there is loyalty. There's the loyalty between Lance and Neve. Lance's loyalties seem a bit divided sometimes, but he's really on his sister's side, ultimately. And then loyalty of sort of there is this breach of trust between Neve and Ash that they sort of have to get over. And then there is the whole, I mean, the whole Arthurian story of the round table and everything, which is sort of a theme that runs through the book, is obviously a story of betrayal at its very heart. So yeah, so that's sort of gets touched on as well. So I'd say friendship, love, revenge, the good stuff.
Nice. Question 11: what was your inspiration for your WIP?
Do that's a good question. I mean, obviously, I love King Arthur stories. It began with The Sword in the Stone when I watched it as a child. I don't know if you know it. It's quite an old Disney
I've
movie.
heard of it, never seen it.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the funniest funniest Disney movies out there, honestly. It's so hilarious. And then, that's when I first sort of fell in love with this idea of this little boy, drawing this sword from this stone or sort of becoming king. And then later I read The Mists of Avalon by Marion Zimmer Bradley, which is obviously sort of writing back to the original Arthurian legend from Morgan Le Fay's perspective and turning her into the hero instead of the villain, which I loved. And then obviously I also really like crime and mystery novels. That's sort of my other genre that I'm quite fond of. I'm not 100% sure when this idea first appeared in my head, which was basically the basic idea was a dead body gets discovered by some body of water. It used to be a lake, and now it's sort of the Bristol Channel, which is between England and Wales. And then the detective inspector investigating the case realizes that this is really King Arthur returned to the present day. And I was sort of like, but once that got stuck in my head, I sort of wanted to write it. But then for my and then obviously the first book is sort of the inspiration for the second book, but I also very recently read, just for an element of it, I did a lot of research on sort of disused lidos in Britain, so outside swimming pools, because Britain used to have this huge rise of the lido in like the 1930s when everyone went, and then holidays abroad became very cheap, and all of a sudden they all became disused, and now there was all these weird decrepit old lidos littered throughout the country. So there is one of the scenes in my current WIP is going to be set in one of them.
Nice. If you like King Arthur stories, have you heard of the TV show Merlin?
Oh my god, I love that show. That is like my number one comfort show to this day.
Really?
I don't know how many times I've watched it. I never watched the 5th series. It's too upsetting.
Yeah, I actually watched it for the first time more on the recent side shortly before they took it off Netflix, and I loved it.
Oh yeah, isn't it great? I mean, to be honest, when I first watched it, I think I sort of randomly, because it was on TV, watched one of the middle episodes, the one where sort of Gwen gets abducted and then Lancelot turns up, and I was like, this is rubbish. I hated it. And then I was like, no, okay, come on, I'm going to give it like 5 episodes, and then watched it and completely fell in love with it. So yeah, I mean, that's definitely one of the, I can't believe I didn't mention that. I love that show.
Yeah, definitely. I fell in love with that show. I was so sad that they took it off Netflix.
I know. I'm still angry at Netflix for that. Honestly, it's just, no, you can't give me my show. But thankfully, I've got them all. So I bought them at some point. So I'm like, I still have my money.
I had it on my watch list on Netflix for like forever, and it's like there's so many shows you want to watch, so you're just jumping through shows. And then I was bored one day, had no idea what I wanted to watch, so I was like, you know what, I'll just turn this on, why not? And I fell in love with it.
Yeah, it's a great show. It's a great show, and a great ending. But I can never watch the 5th series. It's too upsetting. I stop at series. I watch till the end of series 4 and then I stop.
Question 12. Are you a plotter, pantser, or somewhere in between? If your WIP is a part of a series, how much do you have mapped out for it?
Right. Somewhere in between, I'd say, definitely. I mean, I've got the overall story arcs and important plot points of the series mapped out. Actually, they're on my door there, so you can see what I've done. But I also, as you said, sometimes sort of the characters go off on their own tangents, or the story sort of, verges of course, and then you sort of run with it. Sometimes I wish I was even a bit more of a plotter, because then I might not have those painful moments where I come up against something that doesn't work, and then you sort of have to retrace your steps and find out why it isn't working, which can be quite time consuming, I find, and quite frustrating. And then, sometimes I'll just work feverishly for days because I've got, things just stack up on top of each other naturally, and then suddenly I realize I don't know what the next step is. So I've got a lot plotted out, but then there is a lot that sort of just happens naturally that you just need to. And then, as you said earlier, sometimes just nice to be able to run with an idea that just occurs to you while you're writing. So yeah, it's a combination of both.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely feel that. I feel like some of my best ideas can come in the moment and something I didn't plan out, you know?
Yeah.
But also a lot of times when I do have a block, it's usually because I know what I want to happen. I just don't know how to get there, which wouldn't happen if I was more of a plotter. So
Yeah. Yeah, I have that. Definitely happened to me before. And you know that, do you have that where certain sort of moments are very, very clear in your mind, and then everything in between is sort of a bit blurry, and then you have to work out sort of how to connect these disparate thoughts?
yes.
Yeah.
Question 13. Who's your favorite character to write in your WIP? If it's your MC, then who is the second?
So obviously I do enjoy writing Neve and Lance a lot, because Lancelot.
That's lost.
Um, oh dear. Well, okay. Yeah. So yeah, because you know the dynamic between them, I enjoy it a lot. Especially, and you know, now they're trying to sort of renegotiate their relationship after the traumatic events that sort of happened in the first book. There's also a character called Tristan. He's the main character of a sort of short novel I've written as a companion piece to King's Rise, which you know, is sort of available for free if you sort of sign up to my newsletter. But it's very much a companion piece, so it couldn't be read as a standalone anyway. I enjoyed writing him quite a lot. Tristan, I like Tristan, but I think for this one it's probably going to be Walker, because we're going to find out quite a bit more about him. And then there is also a young sort of detective constable who works with them, who's called Gwen Edgerman, and I like her a lot. She's great. She's going to be great when she sort of comes into her own.
Nice. Question 14. What's the dynamic like between your MC and villain? If it's not fancy, then the mean character toward your MC.
Well, so this is tricky because so obviously the villains of the individual novels are always sort of the killers that they're chasing. So for the current WIP, they don't know who it is. They don't know who's going to be revealed. You know, in the first book, it was someone that they knew and sort of trusted. So that was quite traumatizing for them.
Yeah.
Which has obviously sort of affected their ability to trust and to trust in their own judgment. This time around, it's sort of more of a classic, we've got a serial killer type person. But then there is obviously also an overarching villain who hasn't been revealed yet and who will sort of gradually appear. And I think that's going to be very upsetting for both of them because of sort of who it is.
Interesting. Question 15. Without being too spoilery, what was your favorite scene to write in your WIP so far?
So I quite enjoyed writing the opening because it sort of starts sort of with a sort of action scene right away, and that's been quite fun to write, to sort of throw the reader into what Neve's getting up to sort of 4 months or 6 months on from the previous book. But I also really enjoy sort of the moments where they sort of find their dead bodies and then sort of go and look at the scene and sort of try and work out the clues and everything. You know, that's where sort of the mystery lover in me comes out. So that's quite fun to do.
Yeah, sounds interesting. I like mystery. I don't really. It's not really a go-to. Like when it comes to books, at least, like with TV, I feel like I watch a little bit of everything, even though fantasy is still my favorite. But with books, it's pretty much 98% fantasy.
That's fair enough. I mean, I don't. Do you know? But the interesting. Do you know what the interesting thing is? I really like. I'm a big mystery watcher on TV. There is a lot of good stuff coming out of the BBC. A lot of sort of very, very interesting stuff. But I tend to listen to a lot of mystery audiobooks, not so much read them, which is interesting. Sort of my go-to audiobook is sort of is mystery very often, and then when I read, I sort of read all over the place. There are a lot of fantasy books on my shelves, but there's also all sorts of other stuff. So yeah.
Yeah, with books, I definitely fantasy's pretty much my favorite thing. Like I am obsessed with fantasy. There's like a horror book I do want to try and a mystery series I do want to try. You may or may not have heard of it. It's A Good Girl's Guide to Murder.
Yeah, I haven't read it yet, but yeah, I've definitely heard of it. Yeah. What's your favorite book? If fantasy is your big thing, what's your number one? Do you have one?
Yeah, I'd say my favorite would be Harry Potter. That might be a bit of a general response, but Harry Potter is actually what got me into reading, and it remains to be one of my favorites.
Yeah, I don't blame you. I mean, I love those books, and I love the audiobooks. They're absolutely brilliant. And I mean, the Prisoner of Azkaban in particular is a mystery novel, really, because it's a whodunit.
Kind of, yeah. I mean, there's like a mystery element to kind of all of them if you think about it.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, she does write mystery novels now, so she sort of traversed genres there and sort of ended up there. Because do you know that she writes them under a pseudonym?
I didn't. I didn't know if she still wrote.
Oh yeah, she's got like quite a successful series of mystery novels. She writes them under a name. The name's Robert Galbraith, and they've been made into a BBC series and everything. So yeah.
Interesting.
Hmm.
Question 16. If you're writing a series, do you like ending on cliffhangers? Do you plan to end on a cliffhanger in your current WIP?
I try not to. I don't like them particularly. Like, in the Lord of the Rings, there is this one bit where sort of Frodo's been abducted and he's in the Dark Tower of whatever, and the door slams shut and Sam's outside and sort of crying his eyes out. I'm like, no. So and then and that's one of the things I like about Harry Potter. She sort of still there is more coming, and it sort of gets progressively worse. But there is also this, okay, but here we conclude this book. So that's sort of what I'm trying to do. There is an overarching thing, but I try not to make it too much of a cliffhanger, as in, and now this character is dead. The end. I don't. I try not to.
Nice. If you think about it, Half-Blood Prince, it kind of ends on a little bit of a cliffhanger because they're about to leave. But I think that's the only one that really leaves on a cliffhanger, because all the other ones kind of conclude, even though so much is going to happen, there's also a lot of conclusion in them as well.
Yeah, no, and I mean Half-Blood Prince in particular, because I mean everyone was sat there sort of biting their nails going, Snape isn't really evil, is he? And everyone was sort of discussing these theories of how he wasn't and all of that. So yeah, I mean, yeah, I'm with you there. That's true. Yeah, definitely.
I'm a huge Snape anti. I hate him.
Do you hate him? Oh wow, that's unusual.
I know that he has like this whole he died a hero, but first of all, I consider his love for Lily obsession, and there's no excuse for bullying children.
No.
Neville was literally afraid of him. He was his worst fear. You should never be a child's worst fear.
Yeah, no, he's definitely a terrible person. I mean, absolutely. And you're totally right about sort of his love for Lily is quite creepy. All of this is sort of he's definitely an evil creep.
Yeah.
But a lot of people love him. But then, there are a lot of people who think Voldemort would be quite nice if he had a bit of therapy, which is absolutely not true. He's a total psychopath.
He was actually written to be a sociopath. J.K. Rowling herself said that she made it so that his when she made his like conception, she did it through a love potion because she wanted the dark wizard to be born not out of love.
Oh, right. Oh, okay.
But out of like control or something. He was made to be a sociopath who cannot feel love.
Oh yeah. I mean, he absolutely is. He's like a, textbook sort of psychopath almost.
Exactly. So that was question 16. So question 17, what's the scene you want to write in your WIP that you're excited for, that you haven't gone to yet?
So there is a scene sort of towards the end that I hope is going to be quite suspenseful and anxiety-inducing for some of the main characters. I can't reveal too much because it's quite a pivotal point, but yeah, I've sort of got this image in my head, and I'm really looking forward to writing that scene. But I tend to write them chronologically, so I've got quite a bit to go before I get there. So yeah, I'm excited for that.
I write chronologically too. I can't do it out of order because I just get so confused.
Yeah, me too.
Question 18. What's your favorite thing to write about? A certain type of scene, like fight scenes or romantic scenes and so on.
So I quite like sort of I like quiet sort of character-driven scenes which sort of reveal a bit about sort of people and their relationships. There is another one actually that's sort of going to be between Neve and Arthur on King's Rise, which is sort of the hill where much of the action of and also the title of the first novel, obviously. So that's a place, and they're sort of going to meet there by chance, and we're going to find a bit more about how sort of Arthur deals with the fact that he's now 1500 years in the future. But I also really enjoy sort of the scary set pieces. When scary stuff happens. And actually, which surprised me as well when I started writing this, I do quite enjoy sort of the sort of police investigative stuff, especially sort of the autopsies and stuff. Quite like researching those. There was this one moment that I had when I realized that my last one wasn't anatomically correct, and then I had to rewrite it all because I became very obsessed with the whole anatomy of it. So yeah, I enjoy those too, but yeah, I mean, sort of the scary dark ones are quite nice.
Nice. Interesting. Question 19. What do you love most about UWIP and the series overall?
I mean, obviously I'm like I said, I'm a big fan of sort of King Arthur and the Arthurian legend, so I'm quite enjoying sort of putting my own spin on them. But I think my favorite thing about this WIP and the series overall, and I've said this before as well, I sort of feel like I keep repeating myself, but it's sort of the relationship between Neve and Lance. Because it's, there's obviously a lot of friction between them, but ultimately it's always sort of down to how much they love each other, and at the end of the day they have each other's backs. And they've been through a lot together, and they're going to go through a lot more together. And I really just enjoy writing those two, and also how well it's come out, I hope, because people who've read it have sort of said they really enjoyed it. They really picked up on that, which was very gratifying. So yeah.
Nice. So last question 20. What are you most excited for readers to read once it's published?
I hope that people are going to be quite excited about sort of finding out more, but also I'm quite excited about how the story ends and what's going to happen sort of towards the end. This is the same scene that I sort of really look forward to writing, which I can't really talk about without spoiling it. But yeah, sort of the revelation of what is going on and how they sort of work out who the killer is, and what then happens in the course of that. I'm quite excited about. I'm also, even if there is a friend of mine who read it early on, who is now a huge fan of this book, who called me up one evening kind of when I really need to talk to you about how much I love this book. And so I'm just excited for her to sort of be able to read on as well on a very personal level, if that makes sense. So, that's quite nice.
That's nice. Yeah. Your series sounds interesting. I'm gonna check it out once I have more money because I am broke.
Do you know? I'm very happy to just send you an ARC. You don't
really?
even have to. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as a thank you for this opportunity to do this interview and talk to you. I'm very happy to send you a digital copy if you'd like one.
Yeah, thank you. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, because it does sound interesting, and I mean, I wouldn't say I'm like a huge fan of the King Arthur story. Like, it was never like a go-to. I didn't like love all the legends growing up, But after watching Merlin, I did get more into it and think, oh, this legend is kind of cool. And from what I know about the legend, I kind of like the twist that the show took on it. So
Yeah.
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 And I really
Yeah.
like the idea of the main relationship being between two siblings because, like I said, we don't get that very much, especially in fantasy. So whenever I do see a fantasy where that is like the main relationship, I get really excited.
Oh, great. Yeah, no, you might. I mean, I think if you've watched Merlin, you know enough to kind of
Yeah.
keep up with the and yeah, but you know, I agree with you. It did the whole spin on it so well. That's why I love it so much. It's just great. So yeah, no, I think you'll be fine.
Did you want to read a snippet of your book?
Oh yeah, that's right. Okay, yeah, I'll do that. So I'll do that quickly. So this is sort of the towards the end of the first chapter. Just to set the scene a little bit, it's very early in the morning. Neve has just come off a 24-hour shift. It's been quite a bad night. There's been a lot of crime. She sort of had to help out, you know, the uniformed officers on the ground, even though technically she's a detective, so she shouldn't be doing that. That's how bad it was. And then on top of that, Lance has been arrested because him and his friends have sort of vandalized this beloved heritage site. You know, they've sort of gone there and smoked some weed and, you know, painted some graffiti over it. This is the second time this has happened. She's really upset. It's also, though, the anniversary almost of when their parents died. So they're both very upset. So it's this. And then just as they're having this moment where they're sort of, you know, facing off about what he's done, sort of her colleague walks in and says, "We found a dead body. We need to go now." So now they're going to the beach in the morning of the 1st of November, and, you know, to see what's going on. So we're arriving at the beach now, and I had a bookmark earlier, and now I've okay, I've got it now. Okay, so here we go. It was still dark when they got to Dalton Beach, but at least the rain had stopped. The pavement and the benches along the promenade glistened wet. The scene might have been peaceful had it not been for the cacophony of lights coming from the police cars parked on the road behind them. Despite the early hour, a crowd had started gathering, kept at a distance by uniformed constables and police community support officers. A small group of scene of crime officers was milling around inside a cone of forensic floodlight by the water's edge. "Di Khalid! Neve!" A man waved at them, past a stony-faced constable nearly twice his size. Neve rolled her eyes. Ashley Kay, reporter for the Dalton Daily Star, ranked very low on the list of people she wanted to see right now. She kept walking, dismissing him with a passing glance. "Pathologist not here yet?" she asked Walker, noticing a conspicuous absence among the SOCOs and forensic specialists. The crime scene photographer's flash periodically dipped the scene in even brighter light. "On his way," we woke him up. It wasn't the first dead body either of them had seen, and Neve's by now well-schooled mind immediately started establishing the facts of what she was looking at. The body of a young man, somewhat older than herself, mid-30s, she guessed. He lay on his front, his right arm trapped beneath his body, right leg at an odd angle. Apart from that, no obvious injuries that indicated cause of death. He was wearing a white shirt that looked too big for him, and skinny trousers or leggings that stuck to his legs. No shoes or socks. Strands of wet, fair hair framed his anemically white face, the right side turned upwards, left cheek resting on the sand. His lips were blue. "Don't think he's been here long," said Walker, crouching next to the body. "No obvious signs of decomposition." He stood up and approached the water, pensively looking up and down the beach, then at the sea, and finally at the pier that loomed a little further away. "What are you thinking?" asked Neve, joining him, careful not to let the waves lick at her boots. Walker gestured at the pier. "Longshore drift might carry a body from there, round there," he described a white semicircle of the water with his arm, "all the way back to here." Neve looked at him, one eyebrow raised. "My uncle was a sailor, Gov," he reminded her. A cold breeze blew spray in their faces, and Neve shivered. She wrapped her arms around herself. "You think he may have jumped?" Walker shrugged awkwardly as he turned his collar up against the chill. "Wouldn't be the first time." Neve nodded sadly. "Let's order a search of the pier," she said. "I don't hold out much hope that we'll find anything, but—" Shouts of alarm cut her off, and they both spun around to the group of officers behind them. Holy shit, cursed Walker. People had recoiled from the body, forming a white circle around the photographer, who now sat in the sand, eyes and mouth open wide in shock. Next to her, the man they'd assumed was dead crouched on his knees, coughing and spitting convulsively. What the fuck? Neve and Walker covered the short distance between them and the group of horrified-looking officers in a few quick strides. Sir? Neve dropped to her knees next to the man, who was retching now, his right hand pressed to his stomach. Spit and water dripped down his chin. Neve reached out to touch his shoulder. Her fingertips had barely made contact when he grabbed her wrist much more quickly and painfully than she'd have thought he was able, and lifted his head to stare directly into her eyes. The look of primal panic on his face made her recoil, but she was unable to wrench her hand out of his grip. Whoa, easy, mate, said Walker, leaning on the man's arm to get him to release his hold, but without success. Stop it, Walker, you're breaking my wrist, panted Neve between gritted teeth. Walker didn't get a chance to apologize or draw back, because the man's other hand grabbed the front of his jacket and pulled him so close they were nose to nose. Murdered, choked the man. Or at least, that's what Neve thought he said, because the word was spoken in such a thick, strange accent that she couldn't be sure she'd heard him correctly. Say again? Neve forced herself to stop trying to tug her wrist away. The man did not repeat what he had said. His eyes darted back and forth between her and Walker, before sweeping across the water, the sand, and the assembled officers who stood frozen in shocked surprise. He looked desperate, panicked, clearly unable to make sense of what he was seeing. With a frightened, strangled sound somewhere between a sob and a growl, his hold on Neve and Walker slackened as he fell over to the side and passed out. Son of a, began Walker, but Neve reached out her now free hand to point at the man's stomach, where a plume of red had appeared on his shirt and was quickly growing larger. She turned around to the crowd of first responders who were watching them from what they seemed to consider a safe distance. We need a paramedic over here, she shouted. Right now.
Wow, sounds interesting. Very good scene.
Thank you.
Yeah, your book sounds interesting. I can't wait to read it.
Yeah. I'll send it to you.
Awesome. I'll send you my email if you want to do it like that.
Yeah, sure. Or I can send it directly to your Kindle, whatever works best.
We have someone new. Hello. Thank you for joining us. Cliffhanger.
Well, is it? A bit. It'll all shall be revealed in this book. It's here.
Nice. Yeah. Well, I'm very happy you were able to come on today.
Yeah, thank you very much for inviting me. It's been such a pleasure.
Of course. Yeah, your book sounds interesting. I'm excited to give it a read.
Great. And, good luck with these interviews. Have you got many more coming on?
I have this I think is the last of this month, and I have all of these Saturdays for next month filled up. I have not yet filled slots for July, which I'll probably do soon.
Great. I'll keep watching them. Good luck with it all.
Thank you.
Looking great. So
is this
sorry you were late.
Yeah,
but I'm sure there'll be a recording. I watched the previous ones a bit later as well. So
yeah, you can still catch up. But I'll be doing this again with someone else next Saturday, so you can try to catch that one. Well, thank you again for coming on.
Thank you very much for having me.
Of course. Yeah, she'll watch the recording later. Awesome.
Great.
So I will talk to you later.
Yeah. Okay. Right. Okay. I mean, you've still got most of the day ahead of you, don't you? Have a lovely day.
Yeah. You have a lovely night.
Thank you. I'll go to bed. Let in my cats who are howling outside because I've locked them out. So yeah. Thank you very much again.
Of course.
All right.
See ya.
Take care. Bye.
You too.